Welcome to our webinar of Succeeding with Forecast Pro. Today we'll be discussing the new status and item level comment features that are built into Forecast Pro.
Hello, my name is James Berry and I am the Director of Training for Forecast Pro. I'll be helping you with this webinar today. This webinar series of Succeeding with Forecast Pro is run once every quarter. It's free to sign up, so we do encourage you to sign up for all of these videos. Our next webinar will be in May, and it will cover event modeling. All of our webinars are recorded and posted on Forecast Pro, this one included. So after today's webinar, we will upload the video and send you the link. In addition, all of the previous webinars that we have run in this series are available on our YouTube page, which my colleague Franklin will put into the chat. In addition to this webinar series, we also have a second webinar series that covers general forecasting topics. This is also run once every quarter, and you can sign up for this as well. Beyond the webinar series, we also run live forecasting seminars that are multi-day deep dives into forecasting techniques and modeling. This is also available to sign up on our website. And finally, if you would like to learn more about Forecast Pro beyond just these public classes, we do offer custom Forecast Pro training. Myself and my colleague Franklin run these sessions. We can use your real data, and we can actually go through any kind of topic that you would like. One final bit of housekeeping for this webinar. At the end, we are going to take questions. So please, throughout the session, if you have any questions, type them in the chat. My colleague Franklin will be monitoring the chat throughout, so we'll gather them all at the end. If you do have specific questions, please put them there. Now, in terms of the agenda for today's webinar, we're going to start by going over an overview of statuses and item level comments. We will then dive into specific examples using Forecast Pro to show you how this functionality works. We'll wrap up with some conclusions and some closing remarks. And then, as I mentioned, we will finish up with questions. So please, as we go, send your questions along. Now, with that said, let's dive into the overview, and I hope you enjoy this webinar.
Let's begin with our overview. Whenever you work in a team environment to generate a forecast, it's important to get feedback from all members of your team. Different departments have different insights into your data, and you'll want to incorporate this business intelligence into the forecasting process as much as possible. However, when you are working in a collaborative environment, you might not necessarily be working face-to-face with each individual user. Most of this will be done electronically as you pass data back and forth with each other. We don't want this to become a black box where you don't have any insight into what each user is doing behind the scenes. To keep this process from being completely opaque, we want to pass along additional notes and justifications for when we review items and where we might see changes that might need to be made that we haven't necessarily made already. So if we don't directly change the model or enter an override, using the new item level comments, we can pass these notes along to our other users. And these notes will also be able to be seen if we have a consensus review when we gather the team together and review all of these notes as a team. In addition to the item level comments, we've also added the statuses to track which items have been viewed but not necessarily adjusted. We can also set custom statuses in addition to the comments so that we can finally come to a final consensus on a particular item. Now let's look at some examples. Today we're going to be looking at 4 specific examples. The first, we'll start with just a basic status assignment. Second, we will apply item level comments on an individual item basis. Third, we will look at importing comments from an external data source if we want to apply it to lots of items. And then fourth, we will look at a real-world example when we're working in a parent-child project environment. For our first example, we're simply going to look at the basics of status assignments. whether an item has been viewed or not viewed, how you can create your own custom status, and how to make a status either temporary or permanent. Let's go and look at this in Forecast Pro. Now in this example, we have loaded in our standard auto parts data. So you can see here is our hierarchy of information. Now what I've also done is I've opened up our item report and I've come over to the settings and turned on some of our new status information. So you can see we can turn on our status. We also have user information of who assigned the status, the last person to view this item, as well as the dates these have been assigned to. In addition, we also have our comments, which we will look at in a few minutes. Here in my report, you can see most of my SKUs are defaulting to the default status of not viewed, although there are certain items that have been viewed here, and you can see it's been viewed by myself, James. If I click on a specific item, you'll see in the report the status will change to view, and the last viewed by will be myself. It's using my information here. So I can click on items, and actually you will see that they will be assigned as viewed or unviewed. I can also click here on the status option as well and see the other additional statuses that I can customize this to either in progress, reviewed this period, or reviewed permanently. So for instance, if I were to change this to in progress, you'll see the status now shows up as in progress. Now you can also customize what statuses are available, and we do this here on the Home tab under our options. We go ahead and open this up, and there is a status tab on the box. You can see here are our default statuses that happen on each new project that you start. We have the default, which is not viewed, so that's our default behavior, as well as viewed. So when we click on an item, it will be viewed. And then we have these three defined ones, which are in progress, reviewed this period, and reviewed permanently. If I wanted to, I could go in here and add a new status. So if I create a new status, for instance, this is end of life. And you'll see this new status has been added, and I can go ahead and apply this if I wanted to. You will also see there's this option of permanent versus not permanent. So a not permanent status will reset back to the default, in this case not viewed, whenever you load in new historical data. So every week, every month, every quarter, when you load in a new historical data set, the statuses will jump back to the default, which is not viewed, unless I check an item as permanent. The status is checked as permanent. It will stay with this item even as we move through time, no matter what, until you manually set it back to the way that you want. We can also set the colors if we wanted to. We could do a custom color for each of the statuses. We can also see the count, which is how many of these statuses have been assigned throughout my data set. The statuses appear in all of the reports. In this example, I've opened up my forecast accuracy exception report, and I've sorted it for the largest deviations. And where this can be very useful is I can now see all of the items where I have a poor forecast accuracy, but I want to see if our users have actually reviewed these items. So this item has been viewed, but if I click to the next item, you'll see it now says it's been viewed, but there are a bunch that have not been viewed versus viewed. This can be very useful when working in a team environment to say, hey, we have a bunch of items that have issues. You might not have made any changes to them, but have you actually reviewed these items so that you've signed off on the current forecast? Another way to utilize the status is to look at it by different users. So you can see here in my report, I have myself as well as my colleague Franklin who have reviewed these items. And I can come in here and filter and say, let's see all of the items Franklin has viewed, and let's see the statuses. You can see he set this one to in progress, as well as this other specific SKU, but he's come and looked at these other items, and I want to make sure, did this work out the way that it should? And you can see as I double click, my name now gets assigned to this because I've come through and reviewed the items that Franklin has viewed as well. So utilizing these statuses, I can use them in the collaborative environment to assign them myself, use them in any of these global reports, as well as to keep track of who's been viewing which items Now in our second example, we'll review the item level comments. We'll look at how you actually create an item level comment and how we can use the comment report to keep track of all of the comments that have been assigned to individual items. Now in this example, we're going to look at the item level comments. Now commenting is still available in the override grid. Just as before, you can make overrides and type in comments associated with these changes that you have made. However, these comments are associated with a specific period in time and not the item in general. Instead, to do that, if I were to click on a new item over here, you can see down below, we now have two tabs. We have one for our hot list, which existed before, but now we have a second tab for comments, where we can actually type in comments that will be assigned with the item itself. So you can see there's a little button here that says Manage. I'll go ahead and click on this. And this brings up my comment editor. So I can come in and type in a comment and said, last 2 months were high. Let's review as a team. And I can go ahead and click the little paper airplane logo, and you see it applies my comment. It has my username, it has my comment, as well as the date and time that this was generated. If I wanted to, I could add a second comment. Let's make sure we don't forget, and go ahead and apply this, and it will be applied here. So this will be a running trail of all the comments that have been associated with this item. If I wanted to, I could actually go ahead and delete old comments, or I can actually re-edit them. If I come in here and click my little pencil icon here, I can come back and change this, and let's add an exclamation point here just to make that really, really available. Let's not forget. Let's go ahead and close this. Now you can see in my hierarchy itself that just like in Excel, we have a little triangle in the corner indicating that we have a comment on this item. You can see I have a bunch of other comments already in this project that my colleague Franklin has made. You can see he says this SKU will be promoted soon, check models for all customers. And so he's gone through and reviewed some of these additional customers. Now if I wanted to, I could add my own comment and come over here and say reviewed and no changes needed, and go ahead and apply this. And you will see it will keep this running total of my comments as well as my colleagues' comments here. Now while we can see the comments one at a time as we click through on the hierarchy, we also have a comments report that allows us to review all the comments that have been changed. You'll see it will show the items that have been changed, the date and time, the user, as well as the comment. This can be very beneficial. Again, we can review for specific users. So if I come in here and just look at all of my changes that I have made, I can view them. I can double click and it will take me to these items if I wanted to, or I can double click up here, come up to this item as well. So in addition to the comments that are associated with the overrides, which are there, we now have the ability to make these comments on an item by item or customer by customer basis. Anywhere in the hierarchy, you are able to assign a comment, and this can again be very beneficial when working in a team environment. While the statuses will say whether you have viewed or not viewed this item, if you had some thoughts or questions that you want to share with colleagues, the comments allow you to expand that and make these on an item by item basis. In our third example, we'll look at importing item level comments from an outside source. So if you wanted to do this in a big batch process to lots and lots of items, you can do that. So let's take a look at how that happens. In our previous example, we looked at making item level comments one at a time within Forecast Pro. And this is very useful when you're working with a small scale process. But if you wanted to mass import a whole bunch of comments onto lots of items all at once, you can. We would load it in from Excel. You can see here what it would have is our standard hierarchy information. Here I have two examples, one coming in at the customer level for Cargo Master and another coming in at the SKU level. I have the user I'm going to assign it to. In this case, it'll be my colleague Malcolm. And then I just have a test comment over here. So we can set up our file this way. And what we would do is we would go over to Forecast Pro. Here in the Data Manager, you would add this to our definitions file. This is a definition file. I'll go ahead and refresh this. And you'll see our comment came in here for our Cargo Master. You can see it says mass imported test comment, and you can also see it here at the SKU. So I was able to bring these in en masse. So if I do have a lot of comments that I need to bring in all at once, we can do that coming in from Excel and bringing this in all at once rather than individually doing these one at a time. Now with our final example, we're going to do a real-world example using a parent-child project. So what would this actually look like when we have a collaborative environment? What passes back and forth between the parent and child projects, and how we can use the statuses and item-level comments within each project itself. Now in our final example, we'll be looking at a real-life scenario where we use parent-child project. When we talk about a collaborative environment, this is the most common way that you would see it. So you can see here I have my parent project that has all 4 of my regions. They have a bunch of overrides and comments already assigned here, as well as statuses that have also been assigned. What I'm going to do is create a child project, which I've already done for our North America group. So I'm going to break this off into a specific region with my child project, and I'm going to go ahead and open this up. Now here in the child project, what you can see is I've pulled it apart and only have for my one region, which is North America. Now notice a few things happened. As you would expect with a parent-child project, there are no in-place overrides. I can create additional overrides here in my child project. But what did come along for the ride are my comments. You can see the comments that I have made in the parent project have come along for the ride into the child project. What has not come along are the statuses. The statuses are unique to each project. So in my parent project, I viewed a bunch of these items, but that did not get passed to the child project. The child project is independent, and as I click around here in the child project, I'll be able to assign my own statuses in the child project, as well as make my additional overrides in the child project if I would like. So at the moment, while the comments do move back and forth between the parent and child project, the statuses do not. They are independent of one another. And so as I review my items here, I can view these different items. I can set my own statuses if I want. I could create my own individual statuses in my child project that are independent from the parent project. But any of the statuses will be stored here in the child project. But any comments that I make in the child project will be passed into the parent project. So again, to reiterate, the comments come along for the ride between the parent and child projects. The statuses remain independent of one another. In conclusion, what did we look at today? It's important to remember that when we are working in a collaborative environment, we want to share as much internal knowledge as possible. We don't want this to turn into a black box. And using the comments and statuses, we can now see more in depth what items have been changed, as well as any notes or comments that go along with them. This helps us to explain our decisions to our colleagues. What were we thinking, as well as what additional changes might need to be made, even if we didn't make a change today. With the end goal, of course, to build a better collaborative process. That's what this is all about. When we work as a team, the more information we can pass to each other, the better that process will be.
A few things to note about this webinar itself. We did use Forecast Pro Track version 8.2. This is our latest version of the software that features these status and comment functionalities. So please make sure, if you haven't, to download the latest version of the software. If you're new to Forecast Pro or don't have Forecast Pro itself, we do offer live demos of the software. So if you want to see this functionality as well as any functionality more in depth, we are happy to offer that to you. And as mentioned in the introduction, we also do live training. So if you want to explore more of Forecast Pro with your real data and customized topics, myself or my colleague Franklin would be happy to help you with that. As for this webinar itself, again, as we mentioned in the introduction, we will be running these once a quarter. Our next session is in May, and it will be covering events. My colleague Franklin is putting the link to register for this in the chat right now. And you can view all of these events and all of our past webinars at our forecastpro.com/events website. And finally, we're going to move on to our question and answer section of the webinar. So if you have not done so already, please use the chat to enter any questions that you have. We're going to be answering them now. So thank you very much again for attending this webinar, and let's get to your questions.